First of all, I'm not a newcomer. I've been coming to Southern Africa for almost 4 decades.
Yeah.
I think there are massive opportunities in Africa as Africa moves up in terms of economic growth, social development, improving the quality of people's lives. I think there are later entrants into being new consumers for goods and services. I think there's myriad investment opportunities. Secondly, the world is growing and it's running out of food and it's needing to have more materials to beneficiate and process, and Africa can be a natural supplier of goods that the rest of the world would demand. So I believe internal growth and market development here, but also South Africa as an ongoing supplier of resources.
Government is bigger than one person, but Cyril Ramaphosa's presidency has almost signaled a real drive towards getting investment to these shores, and that's a first of a kind in a sense. How did he win you over? Where did he win you over?
Well, I've been following him for a long time. He's a person of great charisma and a person of, I think, integrity. I've known that for many years. But about 2 weeks ago, I was in New York City for the UN series of meetings and heard him speak at the Council on Foreign Relations in New York and another investment forum at the Corporate Council in Africa. And I was really struck by his integrity, by his frank and candid assessment of where South Africa is. And I think that was reflected in the minister's speech this week.
Most people would say among chief issues, largely because Donald Trump has tweeted about this, how did you get over your apprehension at South Africa's land debate, which is currently going forward? We know that's the ruling party's policy, but government hasn't quite turned that into regulation.
Look, it's a complicated issue.
Yeah.
It's an issue that South Africa's inherited from apartheid and the colonial experience, and it's going to take a long time to unwind. It's going to have to be done in a logical and a resource are going to have to be applied to that. But as President Ramaphosa has said in New York, we have institutions that can handle this. We have a strong Constitution. We're going to work with our Constitution, and we're going to find solutions that are going to be optimal and not disrupt our constitutional standing.
Tony, I must ask you this. You control through your fund. It's quite a lot of billions in dollars, actually, that you guys manage. And this investment conference is really about that, about attracting this money here. When you look at South Africa, where would you be putting your money that you allocate towards emerging markets, or where does South Africa look interesting?
Well, let me say at the outset that South Africa, to me, is the gateway for entry into Africa. I think South Africa has the most sophisticated array of services. It has capital markets that are long-standing and well-proven in the international scene. So I feel more confident coming to South Africa than some of the other markets in Africa. Not that we're not there, I just feel that there's more to work with here, and I feel more confident that South Africa's, notwithstanding some vicissitudes along the way, is going to be a reliable partner for many years to do business.
But ultimately, we are competing for your attention. You do know West African countries as a bloc, East African countries as a bloc. Is South Africa still the desired destination for capital once it lands here? I mean, it could easily go to Kenya.
Well, it could, but if you look at the data, South Africa is the largest investor in Africa in terms of goods and services. South Africa is I think, still has the most dynamic set of factors that attract my interest. Not to say that Kenya, which is a very dynamic, business-driven society, I think there are some things that the South Africans could learn from the Kenyans in terms of freeing its private sector. But I do think that South Africa offers sophistication, capital markets, research universities. I think there's many talents that South Africa has that I think are unrivaled elsewhere in Africa.
Engagements like this, you get to shake hands not only with the president, but his different ministries. You hear how they view their particular portfolios and interesting opportunities there. Has anybody changed your mind before you got here? Has anybody changed what you knew before you got here?
Well, I think there's a lot of pragmatists in South Africa's cabinet. I think in the past dispensation it wasn't always the case. I won't go into names. But I've been coming to the mining indaba for 25 years. And I'm very comforted to hear what the mining minister said today. It's, I think, a vast improvement than what it was a year ago. Let me throw out a shout for Minister Rod Davies. He's been a long time supporter of South Africa's enlarging trade relationship with Africa. He's been very engaging in the United States, and I give him a lot of credit for that. He knows that the United States can be a valuable and important partner to South Africa, in not only just in the balance sheet of goods and services, but also in technology and management transfer. So my hat's off to Rod Davies, and of course, the governor of the Reserve Bank and his team are extraordinarily successful. And I just saw Minister Gordon again, and this is an all-star team in terms of minister capacity, and it's good to see them all. There's still some spots that may be a little rough in the edges, and we'll work that through, and there's an election coming up, and maybe, we'll see what happens in 9 or 10 months.
Ultimately, South Africa has got a challenge of growing. The economic growth has been a factor, and it affects all South Africa-facing businesses. What would your message be to those that hold the levers of power to get all boats rising at the same time, if you will?
Well, I think there are constraints in terms of labor flexibility in South Africa, which I believe do constrain the development at the bottom up.
Yeah.
I think there are many opportunities. I had a little roundtable with 8 or 10 younger professionals and business entrepreneurs here in South Africa, and I find a lot of energy from young people. I think I see it in the street with people working hard and trying to make a living. I think labor flexibility is one area that I think South Africa can improve with, but you have to find a way to do that. I don't have any specific formula, lowering the minimum wage, now allowing open shops.
But we need dynamism there.
But you do need dynamism from the bottom up, and I think there's you've got a youth bulge here that's going to be expecting to be able to provide for themselves.
Get into areas of
and now with new technology, the development of broadband, I think the other thing that we've heard today is expanding the data services and reducing prices for people to get more plugged into the global economy. That's another area that the government could really do itself good by lowering those data service costs.